Thanks for joining us, Rick
Yeah.
Crandall. Wanted to talk about what you do within the community, your involvement as far as veterans is concerned. I know that for years you've done a lot of stuff with local military. What's your background as far as your own military involvement goes?
Yeah, thanks. It started at birth, right? My dad was in the Air Force, so I was born into it, and he had about a 21-year career. Got stationed at Lowry here in Denver after his year in Vietnam, and retired here. So kind of grew up here, and then in 1976, just a couple years after I graduated from high school, I enlisted to do radio in the Air Force. Actually, went to Dinfos and went to Guam for my first assignment. Was there 15 minutes doing American Forces radio, doing the morning show on the radio there.
That's awesome.
And then came back stateside and got stationed at the Air Force Academy and taught television production down there.
Oh, cool.
They've got their Blue Tube television channel down there that they do local cadet news stuff going on campus. So we were, at the time, the only enlisted faculty at the academy. Teaching the television production there. And then after I got out in 82, I was in 6 years, I thought, I think I'll get out. And I was offered a job as an assistant athletic director at the academy doing promotions and sports marketing and stuff like that. So I stayed another 4 years after I got out working for the football team and basketball team down there. Then got out of the Air Force, moved up here, and have been here ever since.
Well, and that's such a great example of the opportunities that the military can offer you, as far as like you finding something that you have an aptitude for, you enjoy doing within the military, and then that transferring over as a civilian, especially in this field in communications, where education is so less of a factor in building a resume as is like actual experience. And it sounds like you got a lot of that thanks to the military.
Totally. And then my experiences, after I got out of the service at the academy, that just kind of added on to what I had already learned in the military. But it was really my military training, my Air Force radio training, because when I moved up here, I ended up for 30 years being a morning show host here on a radio station in Denver. 30 years till last year. It ended last year. The format of the station changed. It was time. 30 years, long time to do a job. So, so the last year and a half, I've been retired.
And what network were you with?
So I was on an old school station here in town, an old school AM station. It's actually licensed to the city of Aurora, but AM 1430. And we played a lot of old stuff. We played like Sinatra and Nat Cole and some big band stuff. And it was a really eclectic mix, because
That's what I was listening to on the way over here.
We moved then we moved all the way up to, we included some 70s stuff, but the sound of it all was similar, right?
Yeah,
and it was really a popular radio station and pretty popular worldwide, because people were streaming it and listening to it around the country.
Is it? Okay, so this is just kind of an aside, but like I feel like years ago there was a station called like Martini on the Rocks, was that it?
There was a Martini for a while. Ours was KZW,
but it was the same.
But it was the same
right?
idea, right?
Okay.
It's the same idea, and we outlasted that, Yes, but yeah, it was a similar idea, and the cool thing about it was, when I started there, I was, I started in 91, so I was 35 years old, and the average age of the listeners of the station was in their 70s, right? I would double my age. Mm-hmm. And the connection I ended up making with them was my service, because a lot of them were the World War II generation that were listening. That was music from their era. Mm-hmm. So when I started there, that was the connection. And as a result of that connection and those veterans, I became pretty heavily engaged in the veterans community here.
Yeah. Kind of going back to that era then, what did you do at that time to kind of start doing things for recognition for veterans and local military around then?
So in 1991, which was my first year doing the show on the radio station, I got a call from a gentleman named Irv Obermeyer. And Irv was a Pearl Harbor survivor. He was at the sub base there at Pearl. He was
not many of those
adjacent to where the bombing happened, on Battleship Row there. He was on the other side of the harbor. They were watching as it was unfolding in front of them. They were taking some some attacks from the Japanese, but not like what was happening over on Fort Island. And as soon as the attack stopped, they were the first ones in the water to go on rescue missions. Now, who can we get out of here? Who can we save? What can we help? He called me, Irv, one morning, and he said, "Hey, how would you like to have some Pearl Harbor survivors on the air?" And I thought, yeah, great. Yes, please. And the interesting thing was, at that point in my time on the radio station, I had been there by then probably 4 or 5 months, and I was slowly moving the station to just being a music jukebox to actually having some content like interviewing veterans on the air. And so they showed up. Irv showed up before Pearl Harbor Day, because 91, it was the 50th anniversary of Pearl Harbor. And they were getting ready to leave to go to the islands for the ceremony, but they came by the station before they left. There were 7 of them. We were in a room about the size of where you and I are right now, right? So besides you and me, we wouldn't have a whole lot of people in here.
Yeah.
I had 7 of them in there. There was a nurse who had been at Tripler and was helping get veterans off the beach, wounded. There was Irv. So there were 7 of them, and they were telling their story, and I'm watching them tell this story of the attack at Pearl Harbor 50 years earlier, and I could see in their eyes as they were telling me the story, they were reliving the story. You could see just the look in their eyes. They were there. I let them talk we went like about an hour and 15 minutes just telling the story. And when it finished, they were drained a little bit. I was drained a little bit, but I knew I had found the purpose of the radio station at that point.
That's awesome.
And I was, I'm the program director of the station at the point. I've been looking for, and I said, this is what we need to do. World War II veterans, and now with Vietnam, reluctant to share their stories from war, right?
Sure, yeah.
They've seen bad things, even Iraq, Afghanistan vets now. I don't want to talk about it. So this was when the World War II generation started telling their story. 50th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, and since then, till their death, they've been a little more open, but with their families, they've still were closed off. And many World War II generation babies will tell me, even to this day, man, my father died, and then I found this book, and he had written everything that he had been through, and it's the stuff I wanted him to tell me, but he never did, right? Huh. And there is a lot of that. So anyway, that became kind of my purpose for many years. And then you fast forward to 2000, and
I was just going to say with that, I mean, it's very like everybody gets a lot out of it, because it's probably very cathartic for them to finally be able to tell these stories, and it's obviously very beneficial for us to listen to them. And a couple years ago, I went to my first Armed Forces recognition luncheon that you hosted. I think it was like 2019. Yeah. Okay. And that was the first year, because you had said like any World War II veterans stand up, Vietnam veterans, and that was the first time that there weren't any World War II veterans there. So
it's it was a really valuable time in my life to make that connection with that generation for a lot of reasons, for other things that it would lead to as my career and my personal life went on. But that generation and I, for some reason, had a connection. They heard this guy on the radio that was playing their kind of music that was, fairly low-key and personable, and they just connected with me and me with them, and I ended up being really the outlet for a lot of their stories. I delivered eulogies at a lot of their funerals. I became really, really close. Dearest friend that I had, and a gentleman I considered a second father, George Ciccato, was in the 442nd Go for Broke Regiment of World War II, the Japanese Americans, right? And he left an internment camp and enlisted to show that he was as American as anybody else was.
Wow.
From California. Received a Medal of Honor for service in France, and Joe passed away 3 years ago now, and I delivered the eulogy at his funeral, and I don't know what so much my connection was to that generation, but
it sounds like what you had just mentioned, the music being such a good, and I think that just shows how music is such a great bridges so many divides, and how important stuff like that is. So in more recent years, you've been involved with a lot of projects and different events, and you have Your memorial wall just down the road,
Yeah.
how did you get your foot in the door to be such a prominent figure or name locally that people will go to for these kind of events?
It started really just because they would people were looking for somebody to MC an event of theirs, right? And I was kind of cherry picking which events I wanted to MC. Often they had a military connection to them because I was comfortable in the room. And they were comfortable having somebody who understood them emceeing their events. It kind of all came together in 2000. I did my radio show from Normandy, France, from the American Cemetery
Oh, wow.
at Normandy. And
So cool.
it was during the preparation for that broadcast. There's 88 Coloradans that are buried at Normandy, 12 on the memorial wall of the missing there that didn't make it out of the English Channel. And as I was preparing for all of that, it was part of we were going to pay a one-year tribute to veterans of World War II. And starting with that broadcast, on December 7th, 2001, I did my show from aboard the Missouri right next to the USS Arizona at Pearl Harbor. And that was the conclusion. Those were the two.
That's huge.
And Irv Obermeyer, who was at the sub base, sat with me on the deck of the Missouri and was my co-host, if you will, of the radio broadcast in 2001. That's when the idea for this Colorado Freedom Memorial across the street came up. I talked to many that served and came home, but they often talked about the ones that didn't come home.
Mm-hmm.
And I was learning about the weight of that on people who go to war. Why did I survive and they didn't? Why did I come back? And
kind of like a survivor's guilt.
Total survivor's guilt, and to have carried it as long as the World War II guys did, right? And so the idea of a place where Colorado veterans who gave their lives were honored came to mind, and having their names on this memorial came to mind. And it took a dozen years to pull it off, but we got the memorial built. And so it has, by name, all Colorado veterans killed in action since we became a state. So the Spanish-American War through today, 6,215 names so far. We know we're still missing names, and we continue to research. But that came out of a broadcast with a World War II veteran, right, that just kind of tipped it all off. And
if people wanted to visit this, is it open to the public?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where exactly is it located?
Yeah, go out the 6th Avenue gate, right? It's right across the street.
Okay.
Well, actually, the old Telluride gate, which was the second gate to Buckley down by the commissary. So there's a stoplight there at Telluride, and that's where the Colorado Freedom Memorial is, right there by the Beck Recreation Center. And it's open all day. You can go out there anytime you want. We have just launched a campaign to build a visitor center. We don't have a building out there yet. We hope to have it out there in a couple of years. But there's 3 monuments now out there that make up the Colorado Freedom Memorial grounds. The memorial itself, the glass wall with all the names. Then we have a Gold Star Families monument up now that honors the families left behind. And then the third one is 8 granite pillars that have at their base soil from an American cemetery overseas where Coloradans are buried.
Oh, okay.
The cool one for the folks here, the Meuse Argonne Cemetery, which is in France, we got soil from Lieutenant John Buckley's grave, who Buckley Space Force Base is named for.
Right.
From his grave. We got soil from his grave that's interred permanently over at the Freedom Memorial at the base of one of the granite pillars. So it's really a pretty...
That's a really unique kind of cool concept.
It's a cool place.
Yeah.
A lot of people come. Out there. Families. Of those 6,200 names, close to 4,000, the remains never came back to Colorado. They were either buried overseas, lost at sea, whatever the circumstances. So those families never had a gravesite to go to grieve. And I've learned over the years that's important to people.
Yeah.
So here now that with the names there, they at least feel like there's a recognition, there's a place they can go and at least be connected. So every day Gold Star families come over and sit quietly and reflect and
yeah,
we're
I'm sure
good with that.
That's immeasurable how much that means to people. All throughout the year, we recognize the military through a variety of federal holidays, non-federal holidays. What do you think is especially important about Veterans Day?
because it honors us all, right? I mean, Memorial Day is important just because of the weight of it, to remember those that gave all, those that we served with, those that we, have learned of who served valiantly, and left behind families, left behind dreams they had for things they were going to do that they would not be able to pursue. And the weight of that is on us. One, to never forget, and two, to try to complete what they had as goals for their lives. How can we make the world a better place by living up to their standards? So Memorial Day is obviously is huge, and Armed Forces Day, and you go on and on. But you get to Veterans Day, and it's an opportunity. A lot of the ceremonies we have are pretty solemn. It's the happy one. It's the one where you can say, you know what? Yeah, damn right, I'm in the Air Force, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Right.
So for that reason, I really do like Veterans Day, and I like it too because the public seems to have embraced it a lot in the last decade.
I think so too. Yeah.
Kids inviting veterans to schools to speak, right? And I think that's good. It's important. It's necessary, but it's really very cool. So yeah, for a lot of reasons, Veterans Day is pretty slick.
I'm from Loveland, north of here, and they're known for a big event that they put on at the VFW every year, and there's a great parade that goes right through town.
Yeah.
And even before the parade, depending on where you're at in town, you'll wake up to the bells really early in the morning.
Nice.
I have fond memories of going over there in the morning with my dad to the post. I can't remember if it's post 41, but going over there and having breakfast and just talking to all the guys, and a couple of the guys that I worked with up at the Greeley Air National Guard Station, they would all meet over there and just kind of hang out, and it was just kind of a fun event. It's like there is a recognition of the sacrifices that were made, but like you said, it's still kind of like an upbeat, sort of happier ceremony, and then to watch the parade go through town is really nice. Yeah. So I appreciate that I grew up somewhere that has something like that. That's accessible.
And we connections to the Colorado Freedom Memorial from Loveland, Harold Webster, and there's a park named after him in Loveland. Likely now we think the second from Colorado killed in action in World War II, right, with the bombing at Pearl Harbor. He died aboard the Arizona. There was a gentleman, though, that was on one of the outlying bays before you got to Pearl Harbor in Kaneohe, who was a floatplane pilot who was killed from Colorado. Daniel Graham's his name. He was returned home and buried in Colorado Springs. But Harold Webster, really kind of a cool story. This visitor center that we're building, in the front of it, there's going to be a bronze sculpture of a member of the Colorado First, which was the first of the National Guard who served in the Spanish-American War. And we're having a bronze made of a soldier from that war, because it's the one that's the least talked about, because it was so long ago. There are fewer living ancestors who remember it, right? Well, the bronze we're having done in Loveland, there's bronzes like crazy in Loveland. Exactly right. And the gentleman who's doing it, George Walby, is 91 years old and still sculpting
that's
up
awesome.
there. He was a teacher at Loveland High School for a lot of years back in the 60s. And he knows 3 of his students were killed in Vietnam, and they're on the Colorado Freedom Memorial. So now George is making a bronze that's going to be in the park, facing from the other side the memorial where the names of 3 of his students are.
What an awesome, this
cool?
guy is like a conduit to, so many aspects of military history or local military history. That's really, really cool.
Isn't that cool?
What are some events that you participate in during Veterans Day, or maybe even just this Veterans Day?
Too many, not so many. For a lot of years now, I think this is the 10th year. I've been the MC for the Marine Corps birthday lunch. They host it downtown at the Denver Athletic Club every year, And every year there's about 200, 230 Marines and one Air Force guy, me, the MC of the event, and we give each other a fair amount of garbage and have a good time. But I do that event every year. I do the Aurora Veterans Salute every year. In fact, that Veterans Salute started on my morning radio show well over 20, probably 25 years ago now. It started in my morning show with the mayor and I swapping jobs for the day, and it grew from there into the largest Veterans Day event in the Front Range on Veterans Day. This year will be a little slimmed down because COVID has changed everything, but
Yeah.
But we're looking forward to that. And so those two things. And then it didn't originally happen around Veterans Day, but it is now. Over at the Colorado Freedom Memorial, we do a luminaria display, the great tradition of lighting candles. And typically the tradition is in paper bags, but we put them in glass jars. And we light one LED candle for 3 consecutive nights for each name on the memorial. So in the park, we have 6,200 glass jars across the entirety of the park. And we have a volunteer crew come in at 4, and they turn them on. Then we have a second volunteer crew come at 8 and turn them off. And we do that every day for 3 days in celebration. It is a stunning display. It is.
I'm sure.
Just, you have to see it. I can't even describe it properly. It's really very cool.
Yeah.
And we light the Freedom Memorial in red, white, and blue light, which is cool. And then there's a warehouse next to us on the east side, and it's probably 200 feet easily wide and about 30 feet tall. We project a video that we produced on the entirety of the building.
Wow.
Showing images from each of the conflicts that we honor on the memorial, and then some images of the fallen who we honor on the memorial. So that happens for 3 days, and that's mostly it. We do some stuff with school kids during Veterans Day, the week of. So we're
great.
Pretty active.
That's a really great way to stay busy in retirement.
What's really evolved over the last, especially since COVID started, interestingly enough, is the relationship of Buckley with the Freedom Memorial is tight, is stronger than it's ever been. We do a lot back and forth together now. I'm actually the honorary command senior enlisted leader for the Space Delta II, Colonel Jackson. They started their honorary commander program again, and I was selected to be the enlisted rep. So I'm the honorary commander there with Chief Shershay, and that's been cool. It's brought the Space Delta folks a little bit closer to what we do over there. I'm like most Air Force people, I think, at the present time, just trying to figure out this whole Space Force thing. They change the names like every week or two, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like everybody else trying to figure it out. I'm doing okay with it, but Space Force has been cool, and I've always been close with the wing, with wing commanders way back to General Edwards, who went on to become the TAG here for a while, and General Lowe, who followed him. Also, a couple of Air Force guys that are great, still to this day, great friends, and we're great leaders here. So, we're close with this place. I'm still close with this place. I have my little bids pass. I can get on base, which is nice. I can still be engaged with the community.
Yeah,
it's true what you hear. It doesn't leave you when you're in, right? I got out in 1982. I mean, that's 40 years ago now. Good Lord, that just dawned on me. I've been out that long. But I still feel connected. I want to feel connected to it.
Yeah.
So that is true. You hear that once you have been in the service, you always kind of have this feeling that you want to serve in some way. Mm-hmm. And it's cool. There's opportunities out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, especially if it was like a positive imprint on your life.
Yeah.
So, where can folks kind of keep up with you and what you've got going on? And
Yeah, I guess this is the part of the world I'm still figuring out. I guess we're on Instagram now, which is great. What is it? I don't know. You just try to find Colorado Freedom Memorial.
Okay.
Everything is based around that. But we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, all that.
Do they just look up you, Rick Randall?
They can look up Colorado Freedom Memorial, or you can look me up because I have, my own
Social media
stuff that you can come and follow along with. And keep up to date with us. We got a great website for the Colorado Freedom Memorial, which is coloradofreedommemorial.com.
Okay.
It's got pictures and videos and the events that we've got coming up, a little bit of our history. If you're looking for a name on the memorial, you can find that there.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Anything else that you'd like to leave us with?
No, just thanks. I mean, to everybody that will hear this, my friends in the wing or over on the Space Force side, anybody that happens to catch this and listen, thanks for serving. I know it's an interesting time to serve right now, a challenging time to serve right now in a lot of ways. Keep doing it. Keep doing it.
Well, and I was going to mention this too when we were talking about the significance of Veterans Day and how it's different. I think that regardless of any kind of position that you hold politically or socially or whatever, I think that we can all kind of agree and recognize a need for our military members and what the sacrifices they've made to give us the great opportunities that we have now. So I think it's a holiday that we can kind of all come together on and recognize the importance of.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's cool that we give each other grief, the different branches, give each other stuff. That's okay. It'll continue. Trust me, I'm one of the old guys now that sits around and throws garbage at the guys in the Marine Corps, and they laugh and throw it back. But it means that underneath all of that, there's a love for one another for having served and having done something that not a lot of people in our society do, right? That number's low and has been getting lower. And so for those of you that have accepted the challenge and raised your hand, good on you. Good on you. It will serve you well, not only now, but the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
I promise.
Yeah, it served me well, for sure.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks again, Rick.
Yeah, thank you.